chosen one. 48 hours ago, you were living your life like any other day. Maybe you were pouring your morning coffee, replying to messages, praying quietly before bed, or helping someone you love. Nothing felt extraordinary. Nothing seemed different. But while everything around you looked normal, something was happening, something so significant that heaven paused, and hell held its breath. You didn't see it. You didn't feel it. But the entire spiritual realm stood still. God didn't intervene. He didn't send a sign. He didn't whisper in your ear. Because what was unfolding wasn't a moment to interrupt. It was a moment to witness. There are events in history that don't need a crowd, don't need applause. They just need to happen. And this was one of them. While you were going about your day tired, maybe uncertain, maybe just trying to make it through, you crossed a threshold in the spiritual realm that shifted everything. You didn't pray louder. You didn't do something dramatic. You simply stayed the course. You made a quiet decision that no one noticed, but heaven did. You didn't give up. You didn't cave in. You didn't turn away. And that single act, small in your eyes, echoed through eternity. There are choices we make in weakness that carry more weight than victories shouted from a stage. And so, while you were folding laundry, or sitting in traffic, or closing your eyes in the dark, angels stopped. Demons watched, and the creator of the universe leaned in, not to help, not to guide, not to correct, but to witness. Because what happened next had never happened before. This wasn't a metaphor. It wasn't symbolism. It wasn't poetic language. It was real. It was spiritual. And it was recorded in the kind of ink that doesn't fade. You didn't just make it through a hard moment. You made history in the invisible world. And as impossible as it sounds, what you did shook the very foundations of the enemy's kingdom. This is why you're here. This is why you're listening now. Because something you thought was small was anything but. And the moment no one saw, heaven did. This wasn't a metaphor. It wasn't poetic language meant to inspire or flatter you. What happened? It really happened. And it happened while you were completely unaware. You were living in the natural world, doing normal things, facing normal problems. But in the spiritual realm, a real event took place. Not symbolic, not imagined. A literal moment was recorded in eternity, while you thought it was just another hard day. Most of the time, we think of spiritual truths as distant, abstract, or invisible. We picture heaven like a distant kingdom far above us, and hell as something buried deep below. But Scripture tells us a different story. The spiritual realm isn't far. It's right here. It's layered over our own. It moves beside us, around us, within us, constantly active, even when we don't see it, just like a Job. Job didn't see the heavenly courtroom. He didn't hear Satan asking to test him. He didn't see the angels watching. All he knew was loss, sickness, confusion, and silence. But behind the veil, something massive was unfolding. The same thing happened to you. You were tested, not by fire or thunder, but by the quiet resistance that happens in the heart. You were pushed by disappointment, by fear, by exhaustion. And But you didn't realize that your response, your choice to keep standing, keep believing, keep forgiving, wasn't just a personal victory. It was a spiritual shockwave. That's how it works. When you chose to forgive someone who didn't deserve it, the ground shook in places you couldn't see. When you decided to stay, when it would have been easier to walk away, angels stood at attention. When you whispered a prayer you weren't sure anyone was listening to, your voice reached the throne room, not as a metaphor, not as a nice idea, but as something real. We forget how much power is hidden in the quiet. Not everything holy makes a sound. Not every miracle comes with lightning. Sometimes, it's just a person tired, wounded, misunderstood, choosing not to give up. And in that moment, something eternal shifts. That's what happened to you. There was no stage, no spotlight, no audience. But in the unseen realm, something ancient was interrupted. Something evil was confronted. Something proud was humbled. Because someone you chose what was right when it would have been easier not to. This isn't about being special. This isn't about feelings. It's about the truth. You did something real in a world you can't touch, but that world felt it. You triggered a reaction that reached across dimensions. And while you went on with your day, the enemy fell to his knees. You didn't see it. You weren't meant to. But heaven saw, and it's still talking about it. Because in a world that celebrates noise, you chose quiet faith. In a culture that runs from pain, you chose to endure. And in a battle no one could see, you won. This wasn't a symbol, it was a shift, and it was real. The devil has never bowed to anyone. Not to Moses when he parted the sea. Not to Paul in prison. Not to the martyrs who died in faith. But this time, he bowed. And to understand how shocking that is, you have to remember who he was. Lucifer, once radiant, stood honored in heaven. He wasn't cast out for failure. He was cast out for refusal. When God created humanity, he gave heaven a test: honor my image. But Lucifer refused. He saw dust-made beings and said, no. He would rather fall forever than bow to what he deemed beneath him. That's pride ruling in hell is better than serving in heaven. Since that moment, the enemy has never bowed until now. And he didn't bow because God forced him. He bowed because of you. Not because you were loud, not because you were perfect, but because something in you didn't break. You chose humility over anger, forgiveness over revenge, prayer over pride, obedience over recognition. And that is what shook him. He realized he couldn't win. Not against someone who believes through suffering, who loves without being loved back, who obeys with no spotlight. You became what he fears most, a person who doesn't flinch, who doesn't fold, who remains faithful quietly, consistently. Because real spiritual power isn't loud. It's steady obedience. It's surrender without applause. It's you. And in the unseen realm, the one who once said, I will not serve, dropped to his knees, not from fear, not from defeat, but in recognition that something holy, something untouchable, stood before him. And that moment, unseen by the world, became a first in history. The devil never kneels. But this time, he did, before you. No one forced him, not God, not the angels. The devil bowed because he saw something he couldn't explain, and he knew he couldn't win. There was no dramatic showdown, no sword, no fire, just you and a decision no one saw coming. He didn't kneel because he was overpowered. He knelt because he recognized a strength he couldn't touch. A quiet, steady strength. The kind that forgives when it hurts, waits when it's weary, keeps praying when heaven feels silent. You didn't fight back with rage. You resisted with obedience. You didn't break when it would have been easier to give up. You chose peace over retaliation. You walked away when you could have destroyed someone with your words. And though you felt tired, unseen, maybe even forgotten, that was your power. Because when you should have folded, you stood. When you should have snapped, you surrendered. And that shook hell. James 4:7 says, "Submit yourselves to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you." That's what you did. You resisted not with force, but through surrender. And in that surrender, you revealed something the enemy still can't understand. How someone so fragile can carry so much authority. He couldn't seduce you, couldn't provoke you, couldn't predict you, so he lost control and he bowed. Not because he had to, but because your obedience gave him no option. When you chose love, when you stayed in peace, when you said yes to God in the quiet, something shifted. Heaven saw it. Hell backed down. No spotlight, no applause, just one act of faithfulness that turned the tide. You didn't even know you were being watched, but the impact echoed. Because a person who surrenders fully to God is a person the enemy cannot defeat. When the enemy fell to his knees, heaven didn't roar. There was no trumpet blast, no thundering applause, just a whisper, and it came from the throne. Quiet, clear, eternal. I didn't expect this. Not because God lacks knowledge, not because he was caught off guard, but because what you did, how you endured, wasn't predicted by anyone watching your story unfold. Not the angels, not the enemy, not even you. Because everything pointed to your breaking point. You were pushed, pressed, forgotten, and like Joseph, you were thrown into places you didn't deserve to be betrayed. Misunderstood, delayed for what felt like forever. But you stayed pure. You didn't grow bitter. You didn't let pain corrupt your purpose. And in the unseen realm, that kind of integrity, it's rare. So rare that even those who study humanity from heaven didn't see it coming. Hell had a plan for you, and heaven had hopes for you. But what neither expected was what you actually did. You exceeded every spiritual forecast. You stepped beyond your own history. You broke cycles. You silenced voices that told you it wasn't worth it. And that whisper I didn't expect, this wasn't disappointing. It was wonderful. It was the sound of heaven acknowledging what no one anticipated. That a soul could be so faithful, so steady, so I surrendered, even in the dark. When Joseph stood in Pharaoh's court, clothed in royal robes, no one saw the pit anymore. But heaven remembered. And just like Joseph, your elevation didn't erase your suffering, it proved your character. You didn't rise because of favor. You rose because of faithfulness. That's what made the devil kneel. That's what made heaven whisper. That's what made your story echo across eternity. Not because you were expected to succeed, but because you chose to when no one thought you would. Let me walk you back through the steps you didn't realize you were taking. Because I want you to see it clearly. Every quiet decision, every moment felt small, every time you chose right over easy. This is why the enemy couldn't win. You didn't just survive. You walked in victory without even realizing it. Not in one big moment, but in 1,000 small ones. Like when you forgave someone who never apologized. When you give quietly. When you kept showing up. When you stayed faithful even when it got quiet. When you turn off fear. When you chose worship while hurting. Those weren't minor. They were spiritual earthquakes. The enemy saw them and didn't know what to do. His strategy relies on patterns, fear, pride, wounds, cycles. But then came you, and you broke the pattern. You responded with grace when others would have snapped. You served without applause. You stayed when it was easier to run. That's not normal. That's what hell is called impossible. The enemy expected your past to define you. He expected pain to twist you. He expected silence. But something deeper was alive in you. It wasn't pride. It wasn't optimistic. It was an identity. You didn't act like someone trying to win. You lived like someone who already had. Romans 8:37 says, "In all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us." Not just barely surviving, more than conquerors. That's who you are. You're not defined by what tried to break you. You're defined by the one who raised you. Paul knew this. He suffered deeply, beaten, shipwrecked, imprisoned, but still wrote letters filled with hope. Not because life was easy, but because his anchor wasn't circumstance. It was Christ. You, too, held your ground. Not with all the answers, but with the confidence of belonging to the King. The devil didn't back down because you were louder. He backed down because your obedience made it clear you weren't playing defense. You were standing in authority, not in your own strength, but in the quiet power of a child of God. You didn't fold. You remembered who you were. And when you remember that the enemy remembers who he's not, you're not just surviving. You are a son, a daughter, seated with Christ, filled with resurrection power. Your life real, messy, redeemed is proof that light still wins. That's why hell had to back down. Because you held the line. You kept the faith, and you didn't just win a battle. You revealed who you really are, a conqueror, a child of the King. You've already won. Not because everything is perfect, not because life suddenly got easy, but because you stood when it mattered most. Now the question is simple. What will you do with this victory? Because it's not just a moment to look back on. It's a foundation to build on. You've seen who you really are. You've seen what your choices carry in the spiritual realm. So now, live like someone heaven already recognizes. Live like someone who knows they're seen even in silence. Even when the prayers feel unanswered. Even when no one claps for the effort. There's a man who wakes up every morning and prays for a son who's walked away. The world says, give up, but he keeps praying, and heaven sees it. There's a woman who forgives the same person over and over. Not because they changed, but because she has. And that quiet mercy, it moves mountains. No one saw you in those moments, but heaven did. And now that you know the weight your choices carry, don't stop. Keep walking, keep praying, keep forgiving, keep showing up in rooms that feel empty, because you never walk in alone. You're not fighting for identity anymore. You're living from it. This is what victory looks like in real life. It's not loud. It's not always visible. But it's powerful, and it changes everything. So take this truth you've uncovered not just as encouragement, but as instruction. Live like a son. Live like a daughter. Live like someone hell had to bow to. Because that's who you are, and the story isn't over yet. The devil doesn't kneel. It's not just pride, it's history, and you changed it. Read that again quietly, but with certainty, you changed it. You didn't ask for applause. You weren't trying to be a hero, but you became one anyway. Because every time you said yes to God when it would have been easier to say no, every time you choose grace over anger, faith over fear, obedience over comfort, you moved something eternal. You didn't wait to feel strong. You acted in weakness, and that's what made it holy. You are the chosen one, not because you're perfect, but because you kept showing up. Because you fought silent battles no one saw. Because you believed, even when the answers didn't come. Because you lived like someone who knows who they belong to. And heaven noticed. Your name was spoken in the courts of eternity. Your story disrupted the expectations. The devil didn't kneel because he lost control. He knelt because he saw your authority. So don't minimize it. What happened wasn't small. It was spiritual history. And you were the one who changed it.